Go.
All right, gamers, is it possible to become a world-class entrepreneur while working a full-time job? The answer is yes, and I'll tell you how in 20 seconds, so stick around. Okay, welcome gamers to training day 26 of our first season together in the extraordinary game of entrepreneurship and how to play it. My name, of course, is Chris Allen White. I am the game master, and by now you know that my role in the game is to disrupt your thinking in order to empower you to live outside your phone booth so that you can share your extraordinary with the world. Now, what the heck does living outside your phone booth have to do with anything? Well, just ask yourself this question. What would have happened had Superman never gotten out of the phone booth, right? The answer is nothing would have happened. And that's exactly why living outside of your phone booth every day is priority number one. So gamers, if you're ready, then I'm ready. Game on. All right, gamers, today I want to talk to you about how anyone can become a world-class entrepreneur while working a full-time job. Now, many of us have heard about Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours of deliberate practice rule, which he wrote about in the book Outliers. However, the research of the 10,000 hour rule has pointed out this isn't an absolute rule across all fields. Okay, so then what does it take to become world class, and how can you achieve this status? Well, Michael Simmons, who's the co-founder of Impact, he set out for a year to answer this question by studying many wildly successful and respected business leaders. A few of the ones he studied were Oprah Winfrey, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Warren Buffett, and Mark Zuckerberg, to name a few. And so Simmons' goal during this research was to understand how these business titans apply the principle of what's called deliberate practice to become great. So that's a word you're going to want to write down in your playbook, deliberate practice. Now, what Simmons discovered was a fascinating pattern that he calls the 5-hour rule phenomenon. Now, quite simply, all of these business titans reported that for at least 5 days out of the week, for pretty much their entire adult lives, they found at least 1 hour per day to deliberately practice their craft to get better. You know, Simmons reports that the pattern of deliberate practice he discovered from these successful business giants fell into 3 primary buckets. Bucket 1 was reading, bucket 2 was reflection, and bucket 3, experimentation. Now, here was some of the specifics of what Simmons discovered. He discovered that Oprah claims that books were the reason for her success. In fact, she said, and I quote, "Books were my pass to personal freedom." Mark Cuban reads more than 3 hours every day. Arthur Blank, co-founder of Home Depot, of course, says that he reads 2 hours every day. Then there's Dan Gilbert, self-made billionaire, owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers, real estate investor in Detroit. He says he reads 1 to 2 hours per day. Okay, so that's in regards to the deliberate practice of reading. Now, in regards to reflection, what Simmons discovered is that AOL CEO Tim Armstrong, he makes his senior team spend 4 hours per week just thinking. Could you imagine spending 4 hours per week just thinking? Like if your boss said, "Hey, I want you to schedule 4 hours of your day every week just for thinking." Okay. LinkedIn CEO Jeff Weiner actually schedules 2 hours of thinking time every day. Brian Scudamore, who's the founder of a $250 million company called Zero to E Brands, he spends 10 hours per week just thinking. And then there's billionaire entrepreneur Sarah Blakely, who does her thinking and reflection in a journal, sharing that she has more than 20 notebooks just filled with her thinking. Okay. Again, that's what we do a lot of here inside of our playbook, is that reflection time, that thinking time. Okay, the third phenomenon of the 5-hour rule had to do with experimentation. Now, we all know how much Thomas Edison respected experimentation in his life. Okay, but did you know Google allowed employees to experiment with new projects for 20% of their work time? Facebook, in fact, encourages experimentation through what they call hackamonths. Okay, so how is the 5-hour rule different? Well, number one, deliberate practice is not working hard. There's a lot of energy that's put out into the marketplace on social media, people talking about work hard, grind it out, and sometimes those things are good. I'm not here to completely poo-poo those messages, but it's important to understand deliberate practice is not working hard. Number one. Number two, most professionals focus on productivity and efficiency, not on improvement, which is what deliberate practice is about. Extraordinary performers are more focused on improvement through deliberate practice. And then number three, I found this quote from billionaire entrepreneur Marc Andreessen interesting, and I think you'll find it interesting as well. And in an interview, here's what Marc Andreessen had to say. He said, and I quote, "I think the archetype myth of the 22-year-old founder has been blown completely out of proportion. I think skill acquisition, literally the acquisition of skills and how to do things, is just dramatically underrated. People are overvaluing the value of just jumping into the deep end of the pool." Let me say that again. People are overvaluing the value of just jumping into the deep end of the pool, because the reality is that people who jump into the deep end of the pool drown. Andreessen goes on to say in his interview, "There's a reason there are so many stories about Mark Zuckerberg." And he says it's because there aren't that many Mark Zuckerbergs. Most of them are still floating face down in the pool. And so for most of us, Marc Andreessen says, it's a good idea to get skills. Okay. Now, Simmons concludes his comments on the 5-hour rule by suggesting that the long-term effects of not learning are just as insidious as the long-term effects of not having a healthy lifestyle. Think about that. We all know the long-term effects of not having a healthy lifestyle, right? I mean, all kinds of health issues, cancer and diabetes and, fatty liver disease and all this different stuff. I mean, all this stuff that just breaks your body down, that really puts you in a bad place in your golden years, if not throughout most of your life, if you're not eating healthy. We understand those long-term effects. Simmons is saying that the same is true, the same effects happen to you when you're not learning, okay? Fascinating. So here's my challenge for everyone. Number one, focus on deliberate learning, okay, which isn't learning for learning's sake, but rather learning to improve in an area you've chosen to master, okay? Now, for example, my chosen area of mastery is execution, okay, specifically as it relates to being an entrepreneur and building and systematizing businesses that you can then scale on the internet, okay? But it all anchors back to execution, because if you don't know how to execute, none of that other stuff is going to matter, right? And that's exactly what the extraordinary game of entrepreneurship is founded on. It's the idea of being extraordinary in your execution. Okay, so this has been my focus of deliberate learning for years and years and years. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, when it comes to the challenges I'm giving you here, number two is create a deliberate learning plan for your week where you will spend at least 1 hour per day learning deliberately. Okay, reading, reflecting, and experimenting. You gotta find some time in your week to take risks, to experiment, to go try stuff. Right? You got to do that. You got to get in the game. Okay. So here's the bottom line, gamers. If you want to be world class, you must take responsibility for your life. And based on Simmons' research that I just shared with you, this means taking the idea of deliberate learning to heart. Okay, so here's what I'd love to do. I'd love to hear from you. Place your comments below this video. Tell me if you've made the serious commitment to deliberately learn something. I'm just curious what everyone out there is deliberately learning. Do that, number one. Number two, make sure to like this video to give us some love here on with the Facebook algorithm. That helps our videos out. We would greatly appreciate that. And number three, share this video with other people who you know are playing big in life, who are just out in the world sharing their extraordinary, and you know that they could benefit from this idea of deliberate learning. Okay, so share that with them, and then make sure you get in the private Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/extraordinary game. Make sure to get in there. Share your thoughts with us on this idea of deliberate learning. Talk to us about how your first 3 weeks so far are going, 4 weeks, I should say, are going with us here inside the extraordinary game of entrepreneurship and how to play it. And my friends, I will be back tomorrow to continue the conversation around how to execute like an extraordinary performer here inside of the extraordinary game of entrepreneurship and how to play it. Until then, my friends, be extraordinary in your thinking, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the extraordinary game of entrepreneurship and how to play it. And remember, gamers, if it doesn't challenge you, it won't change you. So get out of your phone booth and go share your extraordinary with the world.